And that's what this movement has always been about for us, not technology for technology's sake, but possibility, the possibility that this industry can move again. So we exist so that every broker, underwriter, every team who builds safety into society, they're focused on preventing coverage gaps, can once again do their work at the speed of thought.
Hey, welcome back to the Accelerate Your Insurance Sales podcast. This might be my first episode where I have had a repeat guest. Today, I'm joined by Rodney Mattos Sr., and we are back because this man broke records. This to date is still our most watched episode we have had. Rodney was actually guest number one with the new Accelerate Your Insurance Sales podcast. If you recall, we changed the name from Bullpen Sessions to Accelerate Your Insurance Sales. And this is our most shared and talked about episode in history. For those that did not listen to the episode back in January, Rodney is the founder and CEO of Triforta.com and Aperionics.ai, which is what we are going to talk about today. And Rodney is leading a movement that's going to redefine what it means to run an insurance organization. So Rodney, welcome back, my friend.
Yeah, Andy, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. Always good to be with you. And, last time we had the chance to do that first podcast, you invited me, and it was your inaugural session with your new branding. And we flew out to and met up in Texas.
Yep.
at the beautiful Makers studio there in Frisco. And it was my first time actually doing a podcast, and it was done with you, obviously, one man and the legend in our insurance industry, and in a beautiful studio that was professionally laid out. And it was a great experience. This time we're doing it remotely just because of schedules, but that was a great experience.
I realized, I don't have one of the downsides here is I don't have my own big studio locally. And my goal this year was to do all my episodes in person. And it just became, especially with the type of guests we're trying to get on the show right now, just became almost impossible to align schedules and get people to Texas and things like that. So, we're doing it virtually.
Works for me.
I'll start by saying this. If you're tuning in right now and you did not listen to the first conversation Rodney and I had, go back to the first week of January 2025 and listen to our first episode, because a lot of what we're going to talk about today is a jump off from that first episode. Last time we talked, Rodney, Aperionics was just emerging. And now it's powering agencies. It's rocking and rolling. So let's just start right there. Let's go back to episode 1. What has changed since our conversation in January?
Yeah, thanks for that, Andy. Yeah, I mean, that first episode is really where it all started. We talked about Triforta, kind of talked about my background, and really how we're trying to fix what was broken inside our own walls at Triforta. So, back then it was about understanding the gaps, our flows, our automations, our tech stack, and we had already built, on Salesforce. So I was looking to replace the legacy agency management systems. And, that was a journey in itself and discovery, but there really wasn't anything. And at the time, this was back in, 2000, early 2018, I'd acquired some agencies. They were on some legacy platforms. We all know the names of them. 90% of the industry is on the same two. But from my perspective, being on the carrier side and building a fairly successful organization with some really great technology, that wasn't going to do. That was the status quo for me. And so I just took the initiative and we ended up building on Salesforce, and that became our backbone. And, we tied it to our agency management system with, all the usual moving parts. And there was some work to be done to actually connect all those pieces because, again, there wasn't anything available off the shelf that we could just go buy. Obviously, you need, IVANs for downloads. You need, documents for syncing and templates and management. You need quotes and submissions and cases to keep track of your people and what they're doing, to service accounts, and kind of just the basic plumbing every agency needs to stay alive. But, that episode wasn't for us about the plumbing. It was about, what happens after all the pipes are in. So, we put up the walls and the electrical and the plumbing and everything else. But, once the basics were done, once that data flowed and, the lights stayed on, they didn't flicker anymore. We started asking some bigger questions. We asked, what could we really accomplish if we stopped thinking like users and we started thinking like builders? My background prior to insurance, finished carpentry, I built a lot of beautiful things. And so I kind of think of that and apply that same perspective to what we're building here inside our own organization. And, that's when our imagination really lit up. I've said this a lot over the years, but don't let your, imagination or creativity stop at good enough or limit your success. We didn't say, well, that's how insurance works, so let's just, keep going. You got the same problem in your industry. People are, stuck in the cold calling legacy mode. And, that's just how we always done it. But we didn't say that, we said, what if it didn't have to? So, just taking a different approach and asking those questions.
Well, and I think one thing, we Complete Game Consulting have gotten a chance to kind of see the behind the scenes because we work with you, right? And one thing I think I admire about what you've done with this is you look at a lot of tech, let's call it tech stacks. There's a lot of things in this industry where people take different techs, stack them, white label them, and call them something and push them out, right? I think a lot of people in the industry push them out way too fast without really putting in the kind of work that's needed to make sure they work effectively. And I think that's one thing I admire about what you've done is you have taken the time to make sure that a Perionics is built right.
Yeah.
And what I'd love for you to talk about, if you don't mind, is it's not about the tech. It's about reclaiming time.
Mm.
And I think that was your ultimate North Star here in building a Perionics is how can we help agencies not only scale effectively, but buy back their time at the same time. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what this whole movement and mission has been about. We're not trying to make insurance faster, necessarily. We're trying to make it move again. And that's what stuck with me. That's still the heartbeat of what we do. When you stop accepting slow as normal, creativity becomes your engine. So, we started looking at how every workflow touched our people. You map everything out, and thankfully we had, a system that gave us the foundation to see and control everything. And, from renewals to reconciliations, everything in between. We asked ourselves, what would it take to eliminate the noise between intent and execution? And that one question, it really unlocked a cascade of innovation. It gave us permission to really reimagine everything. And Andy, I'll tell you what's wild. Since that first podcast, the response hasn't stopped. We didn't run ads. We didn't have to buy lists. We didn't even do a campaign. Barely even had any details about it. But that episode struck a chord. Even today, we're still getting requests for demos and just from that one conversation. So, we think that's the power of authenticity, when people hear you speaking from truth and not marketing copy.
Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, I guess I didn't realize since that first episode how much organic growth, word of mouth, one single episode could have created. So not only was it our most popular episode we've had to date, it actually has benefited you and Perionics greatly. How big did that wave get for you? This is unknown to me.
Yeah, no, I've been haven't shared this with everybody or anyone yet, but so I was down at ITC meeting with investors a few weeks ago and letting them know. We got about 40 agencies now on our early access list. These are founders that they raised their hand after the first show. And they asked for a demo. They believed in what we're building before we even had a name for it or before it was even ready. So we promised them, it's like, hey, this is what we're doing. Showed some videos and some recordings of the workflows and the automations that we had. And when it's ready, you're going to be the first. And so they've been incredibly patient. They've been waiting for us to just, fine tune, every pixel, every line of code, just to make sure that what they receive isn't just another shiny object, right? I mean, there's some tech companies out there. I kind of think of this AI thing as an arms race right now for insurance. But there's one thing I've learned. It's this. In insurance, reliability is the new innovation. Everyone wants the next big thing, right? But what people really, really crave is a system that just works every single time. And that's why we took our time. As you know, I mean, I talked to you about my background in, construction as a finished carpenter. So, the finished results, I'm a perfectionist, and I'll admit it. If it's not clean, if it doesn't perform, if it's not intuitive, we're just not going to ship it. So we wanted Aperionics to really, what I say, feel like magic, but behave like math. So every pixel you click, every automation you trigger has to be tested, refined, and rebuilt until it just kind of disappears into the workflow. You don't feel the tech, you just feel the momentum.
Yeah, that's I think you had referenced it before as like almost like tech that disappears, right? It's when you think about it, it's all we want is I honestly I think about who I am as a user, Rodney. I'm like, I don't want to care how the tech works.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know I can do something at the speed of light.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what made the stakes so real for us, going into early part of 2025. And this industry is more competitive than ever. We all know margins are thinner. Organic growth is super difficult. Service expectations are higher, and every agency is now competing really against the clock. And we knew automation wasn't optional anymore. It's existential. If we didn't find a way to scale through intelligence, we just end up drowning on our own redundancy. And that's when I started using the phrase, automation isn't a feature, it's survival. And that's what led us to build what became Aperionics, not just another app, but what I think is a movement in this industry.
Well, and I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, why I'm confident this is going to have such massive success is it started as an experiment that you built inside your agency, Triforta, as a way to fix your own pain. And now it's a movement that's going to help fix the industry. Anytime I see somebody build somebody to solve their own problem, those are often the solutions that go on to have a ton of success. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you recognizing that, and that's been really our motivation. I mean, that's what makes this conversation really so special for us, Andy. Is that last time we talked, we were experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
Triforta was our always on R&D lab. And this time we're executing. And the difference between those two words, experiment and execution, that's the story that I wanted to really have the opportunity to share today, because I think it'll inspire some people that may, even if they don't use Aperionics, they may end up deciding to go on their own journey and invest in developing their own technology, which I think they should if they have aspirations to do that.
Well, let's go back to those early months, because obviously you spent time testing and tinkering and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And I've got to believe, especially when you're building tech, there's probably that moment where the code crashes or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, what are we going to do here? Do we have a solution? Is this going to work? Is this not? I got to believe you had that moment.
Well, not just one moment. There was plenty of those damn moments. I'll tell you that. But I actually learned through all the tech calls that I've had. I mean, I can tell you, I got a development team that's just like absolutely incredible people, the programmers and engineers and everything. And being on those calls with them is just really kind of elevated my knowledge, of course. But there's one thing that stands out. The day the door kept shutting on us, and I'll explain a little bit about that. we were testing how to push and pull information between, our AMS, CRM, Salesforce, and our language model. So we want to push the information back and forth, and training it to do the heavy lifting, getting quotes, processing commission statements, extracting all the data, hydrating our system, and just feeding it back into the AMS. On paper, in my mind, it was actually beautiful. It was elegant. But in practice, it was complete chaos, right? So, every time we ran a job, it would take 2 hours for the LLM to process the request. 2 hours. It was just like, there's no way anybody's we're going to be able to use this if it takes that long. So, that's an eternity in the API world. And, systems like Salesforce, they weren't built to wait that long. APIs, they really expect instant responses, milliseconds, not minutes, let alone 2 hours. So every test failed, every sync broke. While the language model was trained really well, but the connection timed out and we couldn't get it back into the system. We were building intelligence, but the system couldn't stay awake long enough to receive it. So that was a big issue.
So you had the data, you had the logic, you were lacking the delivery mechanism.
Yeah.
How'd you solve it?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way to describe it would be we built a post office. That's really simple terms. We created what's called an async API, which I didn't know what that was when I first heard the term, but I had to figure it out. So what basically meant is we built a postal system for data. So the way it works is, every policy request, every operation gets its own little PO box. It's a digital delivery address, just waiting to ship. And when a process starts, say the AI, extracting coverage details from a policy, we don't force Salesforce to keep the door open and just sit there and wait. We drop that request into its assigned PO box, and then we send it on its journey to the language model. And then the LLM takes its time. It does all its processing. It thinks, it learns, it extracts, it analyzes. And then when it's all done, it brings it back, that finished package, back to the same PO box. Then our system picks it up and delivers it, exactly where it belongs, right back into Salesforce or the AMS, populating the coverages, the schedules, everything that a human has to mundanely enter, which they hated. And the reason why we did all this, it's just elegant, it's fast, it's asynchronous, meaning nothing stalls, nothing breaks, nothing times out. And that, that one architecture, that single concept, that opened the door and changed everything for us.
Okay, so now you're probably speaking above my pay grade, because again, when it comes into SaaS and tech, I'm in over my skis most of the time. So you talked about the synchronization. Obviously, one of the challenges we have today as we leverage AI, build tech stacks and things like that, is making sure they all work together. I feel like what you just said, it's almost like you guys kind of stumbled on building something brand new. It's like inventing middleware, whatever we call it these days, that almost created that synchronization. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, no, you got it, Andy. I mean, yeah, it's not above your pay grade at all, man. Give yourself some.
I know it is. Trust me.
But that's exactly right. I mean, you nailed it. Once it worked, we stepped back and we realized, wait, this isn't just a workaround anymore. This is a complete infrastructure. We had created our own version of middleware. That's exactly what it was. And I'm so happy we did, because, like proprietary version really for ourselves of, you've probably heard Zapier or companies called MuleSoft, but ours is designed specifically for insurance data and AI workflows. So at first it was just, one PO box for Salesforce and our agency management system, but then we added other PO boxes. Now we've got boxes for every AMS that has an open API, every CRM, every connected network cluster, or even carrier. So we can integrate anywhere and everywhere as long as they have an API. And there's other workarounds if they don't, but that's the most elegant way to connect the middleware or the PO box and the language model that we built to other systems. And so, that realization, that obstacle was the opportunity. that was the turning point for us.
Yeah. I love the post office analogy because I think a lot of people can visualize that when he used it. What was that moment feel like when you saw it work? I got to feel like that was like a proud dad moment.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I said, you know what? I can't wait for the next problem. We need to
Bring on
find
the
more
problems.
problems. Yeah, exactly.
I think everybody, any business operator who is trying to solve a problem, right? Especially when it's software where you hit like go and you get to see it. When you see it actually work, I gotta feel that you described it as surreal. I gotta believe
Yeah.
that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, true. I mean, it was. We watched the system run, and for the first time, you know, the API didn't crash. We were just used to it crashing or just not, populating the system because the door couldn't stay open long enough. And the AI did its job quietly in the background. And when it came back, or when we came back, the data was there. It was flawless. It was clean. We call it hydrated. That was the first time we saw motion, not
Hmm.
just data, but true motion. And I'll tell you, when you're staring at static screens, seeing that motion finally for the first time, that's what feels like magic.
Yeah.
And from there, the ideas just exploded. We realized we could do so much more than move data. We could analyze it, we could aggregate it. The middleware gives us the ability to surface insights like, underwriting appetite, carrier behavior, renewal friction, all automatically. So the more data that's built up and using that middleware to then have a repository to analyze that information, incredible opportunities for the future. But it was really like opening a door and realizing, oh my God, there's a whole city behind it.
Yeah. Well, and I think, the especially with tech, the stories you hear of people building these things, they often started as failure, right? And maybe what you thought you were building at first ends up being something totally different, which is the success, but that would have never happened had the first thing not been kind of a failure. Would you say did I describe it pretty accurately as how a perionics what it is today maybe versus what you thought it was going to be at the beginning?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Andy. I mean, we learned that obstacles, are really the invention. If you just keep asking what if long enough, the problem eventually starts showing you a solution. And as I mentioned, I just like, give me more problems. Let's talk about what are the things that we're struggling with. And I just became, really passionate about trying to find them because the experiences we had is they just turned into, better outcomes than we ever imagined. And, that's the paradox of innovation, the struggle in design, and the outcome is often 10 times better than you were aiming for. So that one async, breakthrough, didn't just fix our problem. It really became and built the foundation for everything Aperionics has become.
Yeah, you talk about, you and I work together offline and you often talk about like the mirror effect, right? And it's in your pitch decks, it's in a lot of your presentations. I feel like what you just described there is a little bit of that mirror effect, for with that said, talk about the mirror effect a little bit and how maybe that's impact your business, grow, building Aperionics. It's something you often talk about.
Yeah, a while back, kind of digging in and kind of thinking through, what this really means for the industry, what really for our people and what we've done for them internally. I coined it the mirror effect because the mirror effect is what I see now as the soul of Aperionics. It's really what separates automation from intelligence, and at its core, it means that our technology doesn't replace human judgment. It reflects it like a mirror does, right? And so think of it like an orchestra, learning from its conductor. Every motion, every cue, every rise and fall of the beat, the system watches, listens, and learns until it can mirror the rhythm, not just repeat the notes, right? So, and that's the difference, that to us is the mirror effect. It's automation that remembers the way you work and then works the same way, but just a lot faster.
Yeah, that's I think what I would probably call, learning by observation, not just instruction.
Mhm.
And because again, with tech and coding and things like that, probably most people would think, well, it's just instruction, tell it to do something and it does it. But you're saying the software, this actually is observing what's happening and learning from the observation.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago where vision models became available. So before it was just all about code and text, but the vision models really changed everything. So now it's not about code telling people what to do. It's about people showing code how it should feel to do it right. So I'll
Yeah.
give you an example from inside, Triforta. For years, our account managers, they spent hours, sometimes days, verifying policies, after they were bound. And you have to do these things. You got to protect your E&O and, potential for, gaps in coverage. And so they download every PDF, every policy after it's bound, compare them to the quotes. You got to verify that the policy that was written matches what was proposed and that there was no surprise gaps. And you got to highlight the discrepancies. You got to check coverages. And then you got to key everything back manually into the AMS, or you got to go talk to an underwriter about something you found that was missed, and then start all over again and get the policy fixed. So that process, it's super critical, right? Especially for carriers that we work with without direct downloads. And so with the E&S market, and more agencies writing standard business, if you don't have that accuracy, you can't trust your system of record. You can't then go quote renewals correctly. You can't build submissions that truly reflect your client's risk. So those account managers were doing incredibly valuable work, but it's all repetitive and mechanical and draining. So, and that's where the mirror effect comes in. So, we train the automation to watch our best people, how they verified policies, the sequence that they used, the logic they applied, and even how they handled exceptions. And then we built those decisions into the platform, into a periodics. And so now a new policy arrives, the system mirrors the process, it reads the document, it verifies, what's in the quote, matches what was bound, and then it hydrates the AMS automatically, accurately, and completely, without any missing fields. So it's like watching your best person's judgment multiplied across the entire team.
Yeah. It doesn't just copy,
Mhm.
it's learning and observing to do it the correct way.
Yeah, it's learning those patterns of correctness. So it really it reflects what experience looks like inside your organization, and then scales it. So that's why I've always say this mirror effect. It is an automation. It's truly amplification. It amplifies the intelligence of your people. So now when that policy verification runs, our account managers don't feel replaced; they feel reinforced.
Yeah.
And the
That's
systems
important.
Yeah, the system's doing the heavy lifting, so they can focus on the exceptions. They can focus on, the relationships, the client conversations, and those moments that really matter. They're not typing; they're thinking, they're advising, and they're thriving. And when they open, the agency management system, everything's just right. Everything matches. It kind of sings like the
Yeah.
orchestra.
Yeah. Everything's in harmony.
Yeah,
I think this has been a big conversation about AI, right? Everybody just assumes AI is going to replace people. What you're saying is it enhances it's technology that is in rhythm and in sync with people, not necessarily replacing people.
Yeah, no, that's the whole point of this, and that's what gives it for us emotional weight. You walk through our office now, and you don't see people fighting their systems anymore. You see, it's like you gotta go to other agencies all the
Cursing
time,
their
and
CRM. Yeah.
they're like, "Oh my god, what's going on? This isn't working again." But you don't see them fighting anymore. You see confidence. You see a new form of energy, I would say. You see people who feel like really seen because the system finally understands them. It's mirror effect. It's really it's empathy and code, and it's the orchestra remembering who taught it to play.
Yeah, I actually like what you just said there. I think people, we talk about AI having no emotion. It shows up 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, does its job. But at the end of the day, what you're really getting at is it's kind of putting the human into the code. And that's what allows the mirror effect. It's not a mirror effect is not a feature, it's a philosophy.
Mhm.
And it's really about harmonizing the human with the technology, not just having the technology replace the human.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Technology should bend to people, not the other way around. And that's the philosophy that drives everything else we build. Because once you realize your systems can reflect your best people, you start to imagine a future where every agency can scale like that. And that's the world that we want to build.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to hear, with what you've built in a periodics, you're making agencies, you're making them faster, but you are making them more efficient and more effective and smarter. And it doesn't mean you're going to be able to run an agency with a third of the people that you have today. It's not about, well, great, I've got AA now. I don't have to ever hire anybody. It's
Right.
no, how are we going to use it to make your people better? Which, up until this point, I think everything we've talked about here is more philosophy.
Mhm.
Let's get to the brass tacks. Let's talk numbers. Because at the end of the day, I am sure if there's an executive, a sales leader listening in, they're saying, all right, cool, man. I love the concept. I love where you're coming from, but let's actually talk numbers. What kind of impact financially are you seeing right now with Aperionics and what you've built and the effect it's having on agencies?
Yeah, no, this is the fun part because we can measure it, and that's what makes this really really powerful. So I'll walk you through an example. There's a real scenario that kind of opened our eyes just to how much motion translates into margin. Um, Working on a large prospect, a company that had been with one of the alphabet houses, big national brokerages for years, and their longtime agent was just retiring. That happens, and the transition to the new agent, created an opening for us. The client felt he wasn't getting that much response, or maybe there wasn't the level of experience that the new agent that was coming in at that other firm. And so our team got what you typically do. You get copies of all their existing policies so we could remarket the account. Now, for anyone who's done that work, you get a copy of the existing policy. You know what's coming next, right? It's the grind. You got to either have your people, pawn it off to somebody in the organization that can do all the extracting of the information manually. They got to analyze each policy, get the information into your system. They got to populate accord forms. They got to build submissions. Then they got to go swivel chair over to the carrier portals, line up the proposals. All that is essential work, but it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. It's tedious and it's detailed and it's kind of expensive. So inside organization, we actually track how long every step takes and what it costs. We call it the cost per transaction, or CPT. So we've mapped, the top 25 things that an account manager does and the top 10 or 15 things that a salesperson does. And we're able to see what the cost of of going out to market, from the time you talk to a prospect and getting the information in the system and then going and getting the quotes. And so on average, all that was costing us about $200 per prospect just to process the marketing and the proposal workflow. And that includes the hours to enter policy data, request quotes, import the results, build the proposal so it can be presented clearly and professionally by the producer.
This episode is brought to you by True Captive Insurance. What if you could take full control of your healthcare strategy without the financial burdens of traditional insurance? At True Captive Insurance, they make that possible. As the only captive in the nation that puts up the majority of collateral on your behalf, they provide financial flexibility from day one, making them an advocating partner for their customer success. True Captive's fully customizable plans and cost-saving strategies ensure you never have to choose between affordability and quality care. It's time to break free from the limitations of conventional insurance. Take the next step today. Visit truecaptive.com and discover a smarter way to manage healthcare. That is truecaptive.com. Well, let's talk about this. This is the one every agency owner probably wants to talk about. How is this going to help the valuation?
Yeah.
right? Because with all these improvements, motion, efficiency, cost reduction, they don't just change your day to day. They can actually change the value of your agency. And if you're able that the EBITDA numbers you just threw out there, if there was an executive listening in, I'm sure they just leaned in right there. How do private equity firms, because let's be honest, PE continues to be a massive piece of the equation here in the insurance industry. Agencies are a very appealing acquisition. How do investors see how this can play into what they're investing in? I mean, this has got to be massive.
Yeah, you're asking the right questions, Andy, and the short answer is they love it.
Yeah.
The long answer is, the automation doesn't just make you efficient; it makes you predictable, and predictability that's
Investors
really
love
the
that.
currency of valuation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So traditional agencies, like I mentioned, we've been one of them in kind of our different seasons of our organization, but operate around 25 to 30% EBITDA margins. I would think private equity and venture capital think hey, you got to be at least at 30% EBITDA in order for us to even consider giving you a valuation and acquire you. They're labor heavy. Every point of efficiency is tied to a person hour. And that's why most trade around 6 to 8 times earnings. Some may be a little higher if they're in growth mode, but because buyers have to, and the private equity firms, they have to price in volatility. But when you reduce OpEx by 20%, when your workflows are mirrored, measured, and moving automatically, you really flatten that volatility. So your revenue becomes smoother, your cash flow becomes predictable. So suddenly you're not just a service shop anymore. You're a precision company.
Well, you know what what I think about that, Rodney, and I think what I want people to hear, and I'm hoping I'm hearing it correctly. When people hear PE, sometimes it's about PE coming in and what is the quickest way to reduce overhead? Get rid of people. What we're really saying is, no, wait a second. With what you've built, we're speeding the path of the work being done, how it's synchronizing with humans. So it's not necessarily getting rid of the human overhead. It's just making things more efficient, which drives down overhead. And I hope every agency owner hears what you're saying. I want you to unpack that for the agency owners that are listening in and the investors that are trying to make a determination, like what is the impact behind the numbers, what a periodics can do for an agency. That's it right there.
Yeah, no, it's never been about replacing humans, just amplifying their abilities. And again, I think about the account manager that wants to get to her daughter's recital, at the end of the day, but because she's got some deadlines and renewals that have to be done, she's weighing the whether or not she can make it to that event in her child's life. And to me, that's part of the motivation. I mean, I did spend, I'm guilty of it, early in my career. Wife was a stay-at-home mom, and, she got to spend time with the kids, and she did a lot of the events. Unfortunately, I missed quite a few of those, and, a little bit regretful of that, but that's part of the power of the motivation that drives me to give people back their freedom and their time, and so that they can not miss out, or they don't miss out on those life's moments that are so important, because you never get those back.
Yeah.
But when I think about the numbers, for an agency and an agency owner too, because, there's both sides of this equation, right? I mean, your people need to feel empowered. They need to feel like they're actually doing meaningful work. And again, I'll repeat it again, working at the top of your license. That's what I think makes people feel like they can thrive in their organization, like doing their best work. But, the simple terms on the numbers, like, just kind of getting into that. Let's say you're an agency doing $1 million a year in revenue at 30% EBITDA. So, that's 300,000 in profit. And if that business, the PE firm says, all right, we're going to give you 10x that multiple, you're looking at a $3 million valuation, right? And then there'd probably be some earn out or some other things that would go on top of that if you stayed on with the agency. But now keep that same, top line, same client, same everything, same team. but reduce your operating expenses by 20% because you're using automation. Your EBITDA margin jumps from 30 to 50, just say, pretty easily. And your profit is now 500,000 instead of 300,000. That same 10x multiple, suddenly your valuation moves from 3 million to $5 million. A $2 million increase in enterprise value purely from efficiency. That's pretty amazing.
Again, if I'm an agency owner right now, I can imagine them. If they've got their earbuds in, they're turning that volume up, go, wait, what? What did you just say? Because efficiency, I think a lot of people, when they think of the word efficiency, they think savings, right? Saving money, whatever it might be. What you're saying is, no, this is an example where efficiency not only does save cost, it enhances your value.
Yeah. No, for sure. So when investors see that kind of margins, stability, that predictability, they often raise the multiple itself. Because lower risk deserves higher reward. I think everybody would agree with that. So the same agency could move from 10x multiple to 12 or even 15x, and now that 500,000 turns into $6+ million in valuation. So that's the compounding magic of automation and empowering your people. You're not just saving time, you're multiplying worth.
Yeah. You often talk about the idea of we've talked about people hours. I think a lot of agencies are very proud of the manual work that goes into what they do. They're proud of the people they have and all the hands-on service work they do for their clients. I think a lot of agencies pride themselves on that. Well, as we move ahead, it's not just people hours, it's precision hours, right? It's great. You've got the people putting in the time, but are they precise? Are they effective with that time they're putting in? Talk about that shift from people hours to precision hours.
Yeah. No, I mean, every hour you reclaim becomes part of your story. We call it the valuation multiplier because, automation creates lift in two ways. It increases margin and decreasing that perceived risk. So those are two levers every buyer pulls when determining worth. But when your cost serve drops 20%, your cash flow smooths, your human dependency compresses, and your risk profile transforms. Not theory, math, of course, but getting into imagining a world where valuation is no longer about how many people you have, but of course how precise your operation runs, right? So where buyers don't ask, how many CSRs are on staff, they ask how many processes are self-correcting. In that world, efficiency isn't a back office metric. It's a market signal. It tells investors your business can scale without strain, that you can handle growth, without having to hire it necessarily equal proportion, but you've transcended the gravity of human bandwidth. That's the world we're building, and that's why I say efficiency is the new equity.
That's a great one-liner right there. That's it. I think the efficiency is the new equity. I think about agencies and they're touting how proud they are of their people and their culture, which are still very important. But from a valuation perspective, them being able to tout the level of efficiency is going to be very important moving forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, it's where the markets are heading. You wouldn't see so much aggregation in agencies. And, what is the average age of insurance operators are well over, 55, I think now. But, private equity, strategic buyers, even carriers, they're all chasing, durable margin. And a durable margin only comes from intelligent systems that keep moving while people sleep. So that's the mirror at scale, not just reflecting human performance, but reflecting financial discipline as well. So what we're seeing is, the Perionics gives agencies a valuation story that really used to be impossible. Not necessarily that we're bigger, we're smarter, and that's, why we're worth more.
Yeah, I think that's the message right there. Yeah. Is what are you doing as an agency to use automation and AI to make you more valuable, and not just to your clients, but to the outside world who might see you as a very appealing investment opportunity. And I think for most agency owners, let's be honest, there is a finish line at some point. and they would like to go out on their terms and probably get a value that they believe they deserve. And that's where these agency owners that started building their agencies in the 90s, Rodney, did not think AI was going to be a component of this. And here we are, and AI is a massive component of increasing the value of your agencies. So I want to make sure people heard that, because what you're talking about here isn't just teaching automation, it's teaching ownership and how to use AI and automation to that advantage to make your agency more valuable. Because in this case, as the system, the AI improves, so does your team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, no one knew AI was coming when it came, right, or what it could do. But I think, was pretty lucky, making the decision early on to buy insurance agencies and to, replace the legacy technology. And was in the right place at the right time, making the right decisions for once, I guess, in my life, right? So, yep. But everything kind of fell into place. And then because we had a platform that was, that was open and, API enabled, and it wasn't waiting for someone else to give us APIs or didn't have to pay for them, I was able to, have this R&D lab that we could experiment with. And when AI became available, we knew we had to jump on it. And we were in a position, unlike many of, those in the industry, they're just now trying to have conversations to figure out, where should we start?
Yep.
You should have started quite a few years ago, honestly, but it's not too late to jump in and start to take advantage of this. Because if you don't, I think you and I were talking offline a little bit, there's a train rolling right behind you. If you don't,
it's coming
speed
whether
up.
you like it or not.
Yeah.
Well, as we get to the kind of the whole nine here of the conversation, let's talk about that pivotal moment. Everything up until this point, talking about how you built this tool to help your team internally at Triforta.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was a moment when you decided, like, all right, maybe this is something other agencies could take advantage of. How did you arrive at that point where it wasn't only, hey, I want to build something for my agency, but maybe I have a solution that I can offer to other agencies in the industry?
Yeah. This is funny. You remind me of kind of that pivotal moment for us. In this entire kind of transformation or this process, and we weren't really thinking about this as something that we would make available to other agencies. Perionics wasn't designed to be a product. It was our internal engine that became the connective tissue inside of our agency. We built everything, integrated everything, and it worked beautifully for us, and it continues to get better every day. But we never planned to necessarily, from the beginning, to share it. But when the phone started ringing, I was just thinking I would help people, explain to them how they could get started in building their own agency management system. And that first podcast that you had me on, and we started getting the calls from agencies across the country, and people wanted demos. It's like, well, I'm showing you a demo, but it's all my data. I don't know if I want that recorded, my customer information. So, but that's when we realized, it's like, hey, we just hadn't built it in a way that others could actually, use it, or we could, share that technology. So our tech stack, it lived inside Salesforce, and there was a lot of work to build that out for our organization. Salesforce is like this erector set, and you can't just copy and paste it and hand your Salesforce org to someone else. The only way for another agency to access it would have been to, actually join our organization. In other words, they'd have to become part of Triforta, which that's a story now for another topic or another conversation. But, that didn't feel like, necessarily the right path. And we didn't want, ownership of necessarily of their success. I thought, I was kind of thinking about, like, how can we democratize this technology and make it available to all other agencies? And I felt like, when I look at what Elon Musk has done with, electric vehicles and EVs and, sharing the patents, and now everybody's got charging stations and, helping to reduce carbon emissions around the world. It's like, maybe I could, have an impact on this industry by democratizing this technology for my fellow, insurance agents and operators.
So is that when you decided to build the portal then for other people?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we realized, if we wanted others to see the motion, to feel it for themselves, we needed to give them a door, a way in. So, that's when the portal became, our digital gateway for the industry, really a self-service experience where, agencies could use the same, automations that had transformed our agency. And not through onboarding into our company, but by onboarding into their own future and just going into our platform. So you're right, it came later than most people would expect. Most tech startups, I've been to ITC, I've been going for the last couple of years, and most tech startups, they rush to market with something that's not quite ready. They call it an MVP. The term is minimum viable product. Mm-hmm. I've never liked that term. I think it's terrible. Insurance minimum, it's not acceptable. Minimum's not acceptable in insurance, right?
Yep.
And we don't have time for tools that kind of work, almost work, or becoming an unpaid, tester while some tech vendor iterates and waiting for our feedback. And our people don't have time for that. They got work to do. Yep. So we weren't interested in being first. As everybody knows, I'm obsessed about perfection. I was obsessed about being ready. So we took our time, wanted to perfect it. And because in our world, reliability is credibility.
Yeah. And that thinking is very different probably from anybody familiar with, say, Silicon Valley. That's a very, very different thinking. That is about the speed to market. And hence we had the conversation in January. We're recording on November 1st. And there was a lot of iteration, tinkering, and changing going on because you wanted to make sure it came out right. And I think that's important, is you slowed down to build something that could actually scale, not how fast can I get this to market.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, speed without stability, it's not progress. It's chaotic. And we wanted to build, a system, this complete entire system, not just a point solution. We could have gone out with one of our modules, one of our solutions, but I wanted everything to sing and fit together. To me, or for us, a foundation is really what was needed, not just another feature. And once the portal was ready, we've opened it. So not just to deliver software, but to deliver self-sufficiency. And that was the day Periodic stopped being ours and started becoming a movement. So I say this all the time inside our company. We reflect our best work so others can build their best work. Periodics isn't about ownership; it's about illumination, and that's how our movement begins. That's how industries evolve. Not when one company wins, like it could have been just all about Triforta, but when the entire ecosystem accelerates, that's where the power is.
Well, you've talked about this before. Insurance won't fix itself. We will. And I think this is the moment where that line really means something. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the portal was proof that we're not just chasing efficiency; we're chasing freedom. I talked about the account manager missing their daughter's recital, right? So the freedom of time, focus and motion, because when motion aligns with meaning, everything accelerates. Andy, I think about this all the time. Imagine a team member who wants to catch their child's baseball game, or kids, coach their kid's basketball game. As I mentioned, when I was building insurance, I tried to make those moments, but too many were missed in the name of growth. I was chasing EBITDA, chasing deadlines, chasing success, and unfortunately, too many of those moments slipped away. But, I think about, so what if that same producer or their support team could meet, every renewal deadline without being buried under those mundane tasks? What if, technology handled that repetition so the people could handle what really matters in their lives, and their business, and the relationships they have with their customers? And that's what this portal represents. It's not just a tool, but it becomes permission to step away, permission to breathe a little bit, to live a little bit, to, without the guilt of falling behind. How many times do people lay awake at night saying, "Oh my God, did I get that done or not?" So, I've had those moments, and that's the future we're building. One where automation, gives time back to the people who've given this industry their lives.
Yeah, I'm guilty of being the guy that lays up at night asking myself, did I complete every box on my to-do list today? Even though the to-do list is never meant to be finished, I am a guy who likes to finish the to-do list, and so I totally know how that feels. Well, let's bring this on home, man.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about a lot here, and I hope some agency owners that are tuning in understand the importance of where we are at as an industry. You've been in the business 25 plus years.
At least
You've
that, yeah.
you've worked for a carrier.
Mhm.
You've owned an agency. You've integrated into a Fortune 250. You've lived a lot of the problems we have in this industry. So let's look ahead over the next 2, 3, 5 years. What does the future of execution look like for an agency, especially if they're running on a periodics?
Yeah. No, great question, Andy. Thanks. I kind of I've seen every corner of this business, and every corner, unfortunately, has friction, whether it be in operations, sales, marketing, new business prospecting, service accounts, you name it, binding, collecting payments, premiums, paying carriers, licensing, renewals. It's all over the place. Every step is a handoff, and every handoff slows things down. So for 30 years, I've been obsessed with finding ways to turn that drag into drive. So when I imagine the future, 2 to 5 years out, I see a world where, all that motion has meaning again. Yeah. So yeah, I think that that's where I see the future, where all that motion has meaning again, for sure.
Well, let's go there. Give us an example. What would if I'm an agency, I'm using a periodics, what might, I don't know, a typical Tuesday morning look like for me?
Yeah. Yeah. So just imagine an account manager comes in, it's Tuesday morning, they log into their portal. But that account manager, doesn't run reports anymore. The system's already hydrated it overnight. I imagine every policy, every renewal, every certificate request has been extracted, verified, and reconciled while before they came into work. And that account manager starts their day not by typing, but making decisions. Their dashboard shows where attention is needed, what exceptions exist, and which renewals have already been maybe pre-modeled, and presenting those in intelligent ways to the client. And the account manager clicks, wants to see side-by-side comparisons, the prior policy, the quoted renewal, the alternatives that were in the markets that were shopped. And a few minutes later, the proposal's assembled. The accord forms are ready. The emails are pre-drafted. Meanwhile, their producers, on a call with the prospect, and while they talk, the system's actually listening. There's a lot of data in those phone calls. It's logging the conversations in the organization, in the CRM and the AMS, and it's updating the opportunity, syncing it, in real time to the AMS, and generating a submission file in the background. And I don't think we're too far away from that. That's the rhythm of the future. The human speaks, and the system moves for us.
Yeah.
And when you walk through that agency, you don't hear chaos anymore. You hear focus, and you hear that motion.
Yeah. All hands on deck. As we're recording this right now in Q4, I'm sure there are probably some account execs that just heard what you said and said, "Oh," it's like the picture of the couple at the end of the pharmaceutical commercial sitting in a bathtub in their backyard. It's like that. Oh, whatever he just said, I wish I had that, because what you just said, honestly, is look at most agencies. That is a completely different operating experience than what they're used to right now. It almost sounds peaceful, honestly.
Yeah, well, I mean, that bathtub moment's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take us a lot of work to get there. I know the one you're talking about, but we won't do any marketing for that pharmaceutical company here. But yeah, I mean, you think about it, peace is what happens when everything finally works together. So, if we build, automation layers for commercial lines and what we've done already, on the commercial line side, extracting the policy data and hydrating systems and processing commissions and all that. But for us, that's just the beginning. Our roadmap takes, that same intelligence into personal lines and employee benefits. The full Triforta triad, TRI stands for commercial, employee benefits and personal lines. So we're using the same playbook that we've done for the commercial lines to eliminate the friction and restore the flow to those other lines as well. So whether it's quoting, home and auto policies or reconciling a group benefits renewal, the principles are the same. You have data extraction, you have hydration, and you have automation, and that creates the motion. And the beauty is the same infrastructure works everywhere. So it's just now about applying it to those adjacent, areas of insurance.
Well, and I think that's, again, I'm going to bring it back to why I think Perionics is going to have such a massive impact in the industry. It's not just about selling a product. You're actually trying to change the pattern of how this industry has done business.
Yeah. No, I mean, Perionics is, isn't just solving for agencies, it's solving for the insurance distribution chain. Already in talks with several carriers, underwriters, and channel partners, CRM developers, to see what this means for them. Because the same inefficiencies we fix in an agency, those data silos, the reconciliation delays, the manual double work, redundant entry, they exist everywhere, from underwriting to claims to accounting. So we're building bridges across the whole ecosystem, from quote to bind, from carrier to client, from data to dollars. So when you zoom out, that's the future of execution, really having total alignment, every player in the chain. So there's no more lost data, no more double entry, and hopefully no more waiting.
Well, it's almost like the industry is breathing again a little bit, because I think there's a lot of stress right now and anxiety, especially on the employee benefits side, with renewals and requirements and late delays in getting the numbers and all that stuff. I feel like what you're building, or what you've built, is giving agencies a chance to breathe again.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we've always stood for at Triforta. Three pillars for us of coverage, but Forta from fortuity, meaning the favorable outcome born from what was once seemed accidental or an accidental occurrence. So we're taking the friction out of every one of those pillars, commercial, personal, employee benefits. So the outcomes are no longer accidental. They become intentional, and the impact isn't just technical, it's human. Our teams feel lighter. Our clients feel heard, and our data feels alive. And this is what I call the future of execution. Not technology for technology's sake, but technology that restores time, trust, and tempo to the people who make this business move.
Yeah, it's, the goal of technology, again, a lot of people have a fear about this. The goal is not fewer, it's freedom. We're not here to have fewer people in the industry. We're actually trying to make the people freer to do what they do best.
Yeah. Exactly, Andy. I mean, freedom is truly the goal. The freedom to think, the freedom to focus, and to create. When we say insurance won't fix itself, we will. I know that's a bold statement, and might seem arrogant, but we're talking about restoring that freedom. And that's what the portal that we've built makes possible. It becomes an ecosystem of intelligent execution where motion finally aligns with meaning, and every person in this business can work at the speed of thought. And that's our purpose.
That's awesome, man. Well, before we close, I'm going to give you a minute or two here to talk about, when you created the idea in the first place. What you were really trying to do is bridge the gap between chaos and clarity. And now looking back, what does that mean to you now?
Yeah, this whole journey has been, very kind of an awakening experience, along the way, and what I've seen, what waits beyond kind of the horizon of automation. I can tell you, it's not a world ruled by machines at all. It's a world liberated by them. The future I foresee, or maybe I've seen it, I'm not sure. Maybe one that I've simply envisioned, long enough to start building, but it's quieter, it's faster, it's astonishingly human. And in that world, people no longer wrestle with their systems. Their systems actually move with them. Their systems learn from them and protect the one thing that truly matters, the time that makes their lives worth living. And that's what this movement has always been about for us, not technology for technology's sake, but possibility, the possibility that this industry can move again. The bridge between chaos and clarity, isn't built overnight. We know it's going to take some time. We are well on our way, and it's built one intelligent decision at a time. So with every workflow is reimagined, and every process, we made it simpler. We've empowered and re-empowered, the operators in this business. We believe that, this is that bridge. Not a product, not another portal, but an invisible current beneath an industry that had really forgotten how swiftly it can move. So we exist so that, every broker, underwriter, every team, who builds safety into society, they're focused on, preventing coverage gaps, can once again do their work at the speed of thought.
Yeah, I think it's important people hear, again, machines, what we're saying, it's not about replacing people, it's about replacing time. And it's giving back time to the people so they can, I'll say it again, work at the top of their license.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with the mirror effect, that bridge doesn't just, connect systems. It reflects us. It reflects our ethics, our precision, our purpose, and puts those values back into the work we create. So what happens next? I mean, I think it's really up to, up to everybody, up to me. It's up to other agencies out there, listening to this, to the agency owners, the operators, any innovators out there right now, listening right now, the ones, brave enough to take the next step. I'll part with this, build with courage, automate, with conscience, and always remember, clarity is freedom, and automation is motion.
Well, I think this is a good place to end, man. Rodney, it's been a pleasure to have you on. I know this is the second time. Again, you are our first guest we've had on twice. But I think I want to thank you for showing, not just what's possible, but what's next. This isn't theory anymore. It's here. And if you're an agency owner, and again, you're still contemplating your stance on AI, there is a train right behind you blowing its whistle that is not slowing down anytime soon. So thank you again, man, for taking the time to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy, so much. Really appreciate it. The work you're doing in the industry is impactful and remarkable, and it's helped us immensely. And can't thank you enough. It's always great to spend time with you.
Yeah, no, you bet. I mean, for everybody tuning in, especially if you are an agency executive, I hope you took this episode to heart. Again, if you haven't had a chance to listen to our first conversation back in January, go do so. Don't be too proud of the manual labor you are putting into your agency right now. For most agencies, there's a lot of chaos, especially in Q4. But your goal should be able to bridge the gap between chaos and clarity. You just have to decide to cross that gap. And I hope everybody does. Be good. That's all we got for this episode of the Accelerate Your Insurance Sales Podcast. One of the most valuable things you can do to help us and other new potential listeners find our show is for you to rate the show and leave a review. So as a special bonus for you, if you leave us a review, take a screenshot of your review and send it to me as a DM to my LinkedIn profile. I will send you a free copy of our LinkedIn Diamond Playbook, our proven 4-step strategy to grow your business on LinkedIn. So go right now, leave us a review, screenshot it, and send me a DM on LinkedIn. Also, please share this podcast with anyone you think would enjoy it. That's it for now.